they're a little confused.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the governor, the legislature, and the Kansas Supreme Court, all three branches of government approved the row standards.
Yes.
Yes. Which
Yes.
we had
Which
no
have all
problem
those in it.
with.
Which
Yeah.
and all those are equal. The Kentucky Row standards. You're
And
absolutely.
we didn't fight them because they parallel.
Here's the hardest thing to do, I think, when you talk to staff, or when you talk to anyone, is that in the political arena, things are done sometimes for political purposes. We need to change. We can get better. We're going to need finances to do that. But oftentimes, though we argue, is more money going to make a change? Can you make a change? Well, the answer is yes of both. Right? We can't do this without some additional funding, but yes, there's some changes that we need to make. We're not being successful with every student. We're highly successful against any other state in any other traditional measure. All right? That's what we like to say, and we are. We can still get better, and it has to do with systems. It's the systems that we could get better with. It's not the teachers aren't working hard, the principals, all of you. It's our system doesn't fit every kid right now. Yes?
I have some concerns with the individual plan of study
Okay.
focus on career interests, because most research shows that millennials won't stay in the same job and or career for very long. I don't remember the exact statistics. I was trying to find it. And then the other thing is I thought the trend was to stop asking kids what they want to be and rather ask them what problems they want to solve. So I like the part about focus on their interests.
Right.
I think you touched on that, but it concerns me when we start adding like career, because I feel like kids can get pigeonholed.
Yep.
Or
They can. And so if you look at other countries, Asian and European, they do that. They pigeonhole at some age. You're going to take some tests and then off you go, right? So Germany does it one way, China does it another way, but they all do it at some level. The United States has been extremely reluctant to do that. You can live the American dream, do whatever you want, so we've been extremely reluctant. What happens is too many kids leave high school having no conversation about what they want to do in the future. So then they arrive at Fort Hays State. And here's what Fort Hays State's really good at, or Emporia or any of the others. They simply ask you upon arriving, what do you want to study? And then they give you the plan. But they don't really spend any time with you developing that. I think we may be closer in our conversation than you think. It's about the interest of the child. It's not about locking them into being the welder. It's about an interest in, I'd like to do something with my hands. So we keep exploring that, because generally what people change and do. My sister maybe is a good example. So my sister was a journalism major. She left college and went to work for the Kansas City Star. Hated it. Capital H. Hated it. So then she went to work for the NCAA and did their communications when they were still in Kansas City. Then they packed up and moved to Indianapolis. She didn't want to go to Indianapolis. So then she went to work for Applebee's doing public relations with Applebee's. And now, the last 10 years, she's worked for Children's Mercy. She writes communications, internal communication. So she changed a lot of career or occupations, but she still has something core to her writing and her promoting, which is what she did. So I don't think we should lock in someone too narrow, unless that family and that kid says this is where we want to go. You know, that's their choice. But I think what we ought to do is help kids explore what their passions are, so that they have some idea when they leave us. So maybe I wasn't clear enough.
no, I absolutely agree. It says on career interest.
Right.
It doesn't having that addition of that word career in
Bother
front of it.
you?
It just concerns
Okay.
me. But I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I
Yeah.
agree with that. It's just the whole
That's why there's such a,
career interest. It makes me think, what do you want to be when you grow up? And
Hey.
I thought like we're completely.
you know what, and now as I'm touring around the state, I was somewhere, not here, but this is not a slam. So the kindergartners walk in, and they, oh, tell Dr. Watson what you want to be when you grow up. I'm like, well, that's nice, but it means nothing, right? And what we want to do is start identifying, what you want to do in elementary is exposure and giving them the breadth of everything so that later on they have the skill set to make those decisions, right? You want to explore, but you don't even need to ask. You can, there's nothing wrong with it. But that means, you know, what they tell you in kindergarten, I don't know what the correlation is, it's got to be small, right? So when I wake up sometimes at night and I think about the possibilities if we do this right with the individual plans, and sometimes I wake up and worry, how will schools do this wrong? And that comes back to the check. Well, if we just get every kid a plan and the kid says this, then we do it, then we're good. It's not that simple. It's a combination of sitting down. It's more of a process with families and kids and schools and talking about interests and what they love to do and then trying to help them find those. That's really what it is.
Yeah, what we're trying to say as a board is we want career exploration done earlier and find the passion. But what I was referring to try to get him to tell you about was that our kids don't get that exploration like we did. Because we did a lot of career exploration during the summer and our summer jobs. And who's working at McDonald's here in the summer? He has the statistics on it and I can't ever remember. So that's why I wanted him to tell you.
That's inverted in the last decade. So if we went tonight, you know, maybe run for the border, or we, you know, go to Sonic or McDonald's, on average in Kansas, 5 adults to every kid. And when I was in school, that was inverted, 5 kids to every adult. And fewer kids are growing up on a working farm as they were a generation ago. And those things, we have great kids, they're just not getting as much work experience and that carried with it, you know, a whole host of responsibility from the time I was rolling newspapers and throwing the Coffeyville Journal at a young age. So we just have to think about what it's going to take to help every kid be successful. You know, I mentioned academics. 3 years ago, the high school valedictorian of McPherson High School, where I was at for 22 years, looked like this. 35 ACT, 4 point, never knew a B, 4.0, was an advanced placement scholar, world scholar with distinction. She took every advanced placement course we had, which was 15, and scored a 5 on every exam. She comes to us and says, I want to go to KU and be a clinical psychologist, get a PhD, be a clinical psychologist. Are we good to go? Right? By all traditional measures, yes, until you know she doesn't have a driver's license. She's never been outside of McPherson. And she's about to go to KU and probably have the roommate from hell. So what did? We took her to KU and had her spend the night and she freaked out. We got her driver's license. We figured out she better get in a scholarship hall because that had a little chance that maybe some other kids would spend studying instead of going down to the Hawk, you know, at night. And she's a junior right now at KU. What's her GPA? Come on, 4.0. Academics never were the problem, and she's being extremely successful. Now, would she have been without us doing that? Maybe. But that was her deficit to get to where she wanted to go. Does that make sense? So we worked with her, like, go out to this in the school. That's why she still was in high school. Strike a conversation with someone you don't know about anything you want. She was petrified to do that. So, see, I mean, so her goal was to do this. She was close to getting ready to do that. We didn't have to worry about her academics. We had to worry about this other. For some kids, it's, I want to be a veterinarian. I have a 12 ACT. Ooh, we got to have a long-term plan for this. Because K-State or wherever you're going to go is not going to accept you immediately. So that's why you have to look at every kid and start having those discussions. Other, yes?
I did have a question.
Okay.
It sounds to me like it's really important to encourage students, especially at the high school level, to maybe consider having a part-time job, even if it's just 1 day a week during school, and to do a lot of job shadowing. So
Yes.
that they can see what types of things they're more interested in and what types of things may have sounded good, but really didn't appeal when you got close to them. But what I'm wondering, I do agree, these are really optimal and great things to have for student success. But you had, you know, the business community has bought into this because
let me give you a couple answers to that. I work closely with Blake Flanders, and he shared this information with me. And historically, what did higher education look at as an indicator of their success? Do you know? Yeah, enrollment. I mean, if my enrollment goes up each year, that's my sign of success. And you know how you get more enrollment? Yeah, you can do that. You just have to have a bigger freshman class every year. You don't have to graduate anyone. Because the more you have a bigger freshman class, the more Pell Grant, more federal aid there is. So if you can grow that, now that's all changed. Higher Learning Commission said, we're measuring you on how many kids you graduate. And what's interesting is that you guys are held to a 4-year graduation rate by the feds. And some of that's cultural too, right? I don't know many kids anywhere that say, hey, can I hang out for 5, 6 years, 7 years in high school? There's something culturally about the 4 year. It's just the opposite at college. Like, how can I spend the rest of my life here? This is such a great thing, right? So colleges use a 6-year graduation rate. And it's still well under 50% for every 4-year college in Kansas. Technical schools are the highest. Washburn Tech is actually the highest in the state, around 73% graduation, 6 years into it. So they're changing. Now, when they mark that change from enrollment to graduation, that inverts their system about who they're looking for. And if you look at the prestigious private schools now, many of those are going away from SAT and ACT because they're saying they're not telling us the full picture of the child. What we want to see are what's a young person's passions, and can they articulate that in an application process. Now that, I will tell you, Wichita State hasn't changed that. None of our state schools have changed that. But I see that coming because they're going to have to look at a different clientele if you're going to have higher graduation rates. Otherwise, you can just sort and select. It's kind of how they've done it in the past. So I think you're going to see changes there.
That would be good, because I think that in addition to that, the amount of time that you have to spend, some students just don't want to wait that long. And we kind of deal with it at the high school level by allowing early graduation. But in college, sometimes there are so many additional non-related electives that students have to take to get to that degree.
Absolutely. That makes no sense, right? So my son was Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. And they're on a quarter system. So they took 3 classes a quarter. And from day one he entered, he had 2 animation classes and 1 gen ed. And his last quarter, he had 2 animation classes and 1 gen ed. He had a gen ed over all 4, but they spread it out. Because what they said is, you're going to pay a lot of money for this. We want you to see really quickly if this is something you like to do or not. So you could change early. In most cases, schools send you 2 years of gen eds, and the first time you really get into your major is late in that sophomore year, early that junior year, and now you've spent a great deal of time in that, and you say, well, I don't know if that engineering's for me, and you're well into it. So I think you're starting to see higher ed rethink that too. There's no reason that you can't take those gen eds spread out. But right now, most of them are front-loaded.
But can we get the secondary, post-secondary institutions to coordinate with us?
Maybe. I mean, you're talking about a very independent group of people. So there are the board of regents, but then you have the private colleges and the community colleges, and there's certain things we can do. But when you know that many decisions at a college level are being made at the professor level within a college of the university, that tells you how fragmented that whole system is. So I think there's some great conversation going on that they're being held responsible to, and they're frightened by that because it's a huge change for them. And I know that from the Board of Regents standpoint, they are very interested in partnering with us.
Gee, Kansas is not the only school that's talking about individual plans of study, and some states have gone on. Could where some of the kids graduating from high school, the individual plan of study is actually a portfolio. The child has a portfolio. Our state schools and our private schools are seeing kids come to them with portfolios instead of grade point averages and that time. So the change is going to be forced. And we're just seem to be ahead of higher ed on needing to change the system. But you can get articulate agreements with colleges that they will accept your portfolio instead of your grade point averages. And with different colleges, just like you do with community college and some of those, you could go to an articulate agreement type thing if you want to move that way.
That's great, because not only do we need our in-state institutions to be consistent with this, but it needs to be a more national conversation.
Right. We had a really good thing going when, we talked about smarter balance at one time. Because any state that had a college that was accepting a smarter balance, they could go here in Kansas, it was such a placement as we did, that you could have gone to other state schools where they were pretty much smarter. But I really think the new thing is going to be this portfolio. When I go to the national meetings, that's what they're talking about. High school to post-secondary, and it's who's going to start accepting. And I know there's some schools that are doing that, but maybe they're starting out with an articulate agreement because we're moving a little slow on post-secondary. They're talking about it.
Yeah.
The conversations are there. We've taken the conversations to them.
Here.
But it may have to be a school system deciding to go out and make that articulate agreement with somebody before we actually get them moving in that direction.
Here's what's really interesting about higher ed. Higher ed has been for centuries the credentialing agency, credentialing that you are worthy of something. Google no longer hires by credentialing. Google, one of the largest companies, is hiring by your skill. And what they ask you in the application is, for whatever job that you're applying for, is describe to us your experiences and skill set that would match that. Now, they will tell you that they still hire, most of those people are college graduates, but that's not what they screen for. They screen that you can tell us that skill set, and then when you interview, you show us that you have this skill set. And they don't care if you're a high school dropout if you have it. That's interesting. If you start looking, if companies start looking at not to the colleges as the credentialing agency, that starts to change the game tremendously and starts to make us rethink this. And what Google is doing it, their vice president, in fact, in charge of HR, is going to be at the state conference in October and going to talk about that. So that's just interesting, I think, to look at.
So, can I just give my 2 cents? As a former regent with the Board of Regents, I just wanted to state that Sally's correct in saying that the universities have been working very hard with the Board of Regents to form those articulation agreements so that students don't have to retake courses, so that they can get on that plan. For example, if they start taking courses at Fort Hays State and they take English or whatever core classes, that if they transfer on to another university, they're able to take that plan with them and they don't have to retake classes. Not only that, but within each university too. Sometimes students would get started on a program, maybe they would like to be an architect. And somewhere along the way, they would change and say, oh, I've decided to be a veterinarian instead. Well, some of the classes they had already taken would not transfer into that other program. And so that's one of the things that the Regents really looked at and decided to put together those articulation agreements. The other thing that I know they were working on, this was about 4 years ago, trying to come up with an individual learning plan that was going to be online so that students could go ahead and start looking at that plan when they were in high school to
to look at what they wanted to do as far as working on some sort of a degree, and working with their parents to make sure that they were headed in the right direction, and also looking at cost, because as you know, it is very expensive to go on to higher ed. And so they wanted to make sure that students not only were prepared academically, but also taking a look at, you know, are they ready financially? So just wanted to add that to that.
Thank you so much. Yep, and your hard work. The school board pays really well. So you got a bonus tonight. You got junior mitts and popcorn. You know, that's like double pay. So, thank you so much for your service, your commitment to this school district and the kids here in Garden City and across Kansas. Whatever we can do, I can do as commissioner. Sally can do at the state board, or whatever we can't do, I can get out of the way and quit messing with us. We'd love to know, because we really want to see you be successful in what makes sense here in Garden City.
One thing that we said to your staff today at the end is, you know, the system doesn't have to look like it used to. We know that maybe the system needs to change. If there's anything that you want to do to make that system look different, and you want to try, there's not very many rules anymore keeping you from doing it. We're under a whole new thing under ESEA. And if you think there's a rule that's blocking you, call us, ask us. If I need to help you with that blockage, call me and I'll take it to the board for you. We're serious about making a change. And we're serious about looking at each student. So anything we can do to help you with that.
How about getting rid of all the annual tests?
And we tried. In fact, that's really why Jerry Moran voted no for the new ESEA, just out of.
You know what we're going to do, Laura? We're going to shrink it though.
Yeah.
You're going to watch us shrink the footprint.
And
So that you can do testing that matters, that, you know, and we're gonna give you better reports and faster reports, and that's gonna, but we gotta shrink it. It takes too long, it's too cumbersome, you don't get the reports back soon enough, it's not acceptable. We gotta get better.
And they're not going to be the end-all and be-all of everything. I mean, they're gone. As far as the state board, we're gonna do what we need to for Fed, but it's not part of your accreditation system. It's not gonna be the thing. It's not part of, we're trying to keep it out of the legislators' funding to you. We're trying to keep the testing out of that, so. Don't know if we'll be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mark,
I
did you
just have one quick question. I think we're past this now on the 4-year high school. If we have a 5th-year graduator or a 6th-year graduator, that's a success story.
Yes, it is.
And we don't want to lose that in our perspective.
Yeah, right now, the federal government says we can use 4 or 5-year cohort. And we'll use both, and we'll actually report out both. Because we do gain a little bit in that 5th year. It's pretty rare we gain past the 5th year. With some handicapped kids we do, but there are ways to do that in the 18 to 21-year-old programs. But yes, I mean, those are success stories, so thank you, Mark.
We on the state board have talked about that, and we know we have to gather that information for the feds, but we don't want to deem you on your accreditation if you're successful getting a student. And that we've been having that conversation, and I think the majority of the board agrees with you on it. So it might end up with a 2 reporting. One that we have to send to the feds and one we're still discussing.
Well, even here locally, we've talked in the past about keeping those numbers just so we know, because regardless of what the system says, it is a success story.
If you can't count that child, you know, how's that child feel on? They made a lot of effort to get where they're going, and we want them to feel successful.
With the odds against them kicking back in, it's a pretty cool thing.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
That's right, because perseverance is really one of those soft skills
It is.
that businesses want.
One of the big ones, perseverance, grit, determination, there's lots of words for it, but that's one of the #1 soft skills people are looking for, that you don't give up, you persevere through it. And that's true of our topping students also. you'll see that. And school's really easy, you're cruising along, and all of a sudden you hit something. Our topping kids sometimes don't want to persevere either, but because it's come easy to them. So, thank you so much.
One quick thing. Randy, thanks for coming out. You don't see this every day where the Commissioner of Education comes out to school districts, and I know we're not the only one that Randy's been visiting, and he takes time to come and work with local boards. We are very well represented in our area with Sally's representation on the state board, and the amount of time that she gives. Almost every time in Topeka, that I'm in Topeka, it's some significant event. You look around and Sally's there somewhere, and that's a huge time commitment, and we really appreciate that. I think another thing that people don't understand is in Kansas, we are so fortunate to have a State Department of Education that supports schools, that genuinely listens to what's going on out there and wants the system to be better for kids. And there are more probably places than not where that's not the attitude necessarily in state departments. And our State Department works hard to give us a voice, to keep us involved, and it's always geared around how do we make this better for kids. It's not gotchas. It's, hey, if we need to figure out a way to do something, talk to us, we'll try to help you get it done. Not, if you do that wrong, we're coming in and slapping hands or writing reports. It's really about what's best for our children in this state. And, you know, in the climate today, that's not always how we feel about decisions in schools that are being made in Topeka. So thank you very much for your support, and we're proud of what we're able to do here in Kansas. Thank you.
At least they got to see the coolest school district.
Yeah.
Okay. I use you guys a lot.
I can't tell you, every time I talk to her, when are you coming back to Western Kansas? We have places to go. We have people to see.
But he's
I
been-
try, Sally, I really do.
He's been doing, and he has a goal to go to all of the districts. And I think that's admirable of a commissioner to actually get out there in those districts to see what's going on. Because I'm a firm believer that Western Kansas and Western Kansas rural is different than Eastern Kansas and Eastern Kansas rural. So I've been dragging him. Well, actually, he's been driving.
Thanks again.
you.
Have a good evening.